based around the theme of the Cold War space race, which is the subject that I'm sort of interested in. If I talk about this piece first, it's called Belokonyov, and it's back in 1962 there was a cosmonaut supposedly fired up on a test orbit, and a radio transmission was picked up by two Italian radio enthusiasts, and when they got it translated it appeared to be a distress message from Alexis Belokonyov, and he was never seen again, and the Russians denied all existence of him, and it's almost turned into a kind of urban myth of whether he actually existed at all. I kind of wanted to make it almost like a modern day Icarus. The metal at the top represents the kind of with the Russian space program, it was all very much done on a shoestring. So even though it kind of seemed very technologically advanced from the outside, a lot of it was just held together, kind of with string and rubber bands, really. So you've got this rustic piece of metal, and the gold peeling off is also a reference to the sun. Again, the kind of Icarus story. This is an equation for working out the velocity of a falling object, and this is Belokonyov falling from space kind of thing there. This piece is called Magnificent Desolation, and that was the words used by Buzz Aldrin when he first walked on the moon. He looked around and said, "It's magnificent desolation," you know. And I wanted to get that feeling across. This is actually a little figure of a spaceman on here, and his shadow in the background. And rather than create a painting, I wanted to do it in a kind of different way. And ideally, I'd like to have done a massive canvas, you know, kind of 20-foot square, but I didn't have the room or the money really. So yeah, this is basically trying to get across that feeling of this kind of isolation and desolation, and being on the moon, you're kind of a quarter of a million miles from Earth, so if anything goes wrong, you kind of have it. So that's what that's about. And this piece is Genesis Man. Again, it's a kind of a space theme, but it's also, I wanted to get that, it's kind of difficult to explain really, but that kind of notion of first. Genesis obviously is the first book of the Bible. Neil Armstrong, first man on the moon, and there's also a skeleton, or a kind of fossilized skeleton, because in theory somewhere on the Earth is the bones of the first human. So you know, that kind of contrast between this huge technological leap and our initial kind of humble beginnings, really. And here it actually says in the beginning in Hebrew, but you have to look quite closely to see it, which is kind of what I wanted. I didn't want it to be immediately obvious. The piece at the top, which has been one of the most popular pieces of the exhibition, is called the Second Amendment, and this is a kind of a reference to the American Constitution, and the Second Amendment is the right to bear arms, and it's actually got 1,300 little plastic soldiers on there. And it was the idea first came to me after the floods in New Orleans, and instead of people helping each other out and rescue teams going in, they all kind of started shooting each other and looting each other's houses, and it happened within a very short space of time. This kind of modern society just fell apart, really. It appeared, you know, and it was just a comment on that, really. This kind of this resistance against giving up the gun in America is such a huge part of who they are, and it's such a destructive thing, I think, really. So that was a comment on that piece.